All right. We'll monitor the situation, hit the like button, and share. So we're gonna do a new segment, as far as to say if we were CEOs of companies, what would we do? So Microsoft, Disney, Nike. So Ian, start with you. If you were the CEO of Microsoft, what would you do?
Satya is an amazing CEO, so I'm not qualified to take his position. But first, as a hyperscaler, you have to get the CapEx spend under control. Secondly, I have to figure out a return basis for the capital that's been invested. And most importantly, I would focus on acquiring a company in a niche and figure out a way to automatically integrate that into the enterprise system. Like if you look right now, no matter where you go in Microsoft's engine with Copilot, how many tasks can you actually run automatically through there where you can offload it and don't have to worry about that part of the business? You can argue almost zero. Like Rashad, Troy, are any of you using Copilot and saying this specific part of the business I don't have to worry about because Copilot is running it? Answer is no. So I will focus. I really wish they could have picked up Cursor before Elon and SpaceX did. I think that would have been an amazing acquisition to integrate into the enterprise side. But I will focus on a company that I could acquire that will allow me to say to my enterprise base, hey, let me take this off your plate. The two games that everyone is playing right now is a hedge fund manager and saying, if we put 10 billion into CapEx, here's how we're going to get 50 back. And secondly, here's how I'm going to make your life easier. For all the spend that they've done in a partnership with OpenAI, are our lives as business people easier through Microsoft as of now? Nominally. So those are the three initiatives that I would focus on to not only bring the stock up, but bring the value of the usage up in terms of enterprise and in terms of the software as well.
All right. Man, Disney, man, I feel like I'm being triggered. Disney has been a favorite of mine. It's in a unique spot because they have it. They have the thing that is needed. They just don't know how to monetize it correctly. And the thing in terms of streaming is live sports with ESPN. And they haven't really figured out how to make this something that is going to be profitable. Obviously, broadcasting, the way it looks now is very different, right? Like streaming has become the thing. And so linear television is not the way in terms of profitability, right? Having 1,000 channels is just not the way that they're going to generate revenue. So they got to figure out how to make ESPN a standalone. I know they try to do the subscription service for it. It's still very confusing. I did it myself. It's still very confusing. And really figure out how to monetize the live sports category that they have. I mean, they have ESPN, which is the world leader. You can see what the finals did this year in terms of ratings. So people are still watching in demand. They still have Monday Night Football. So they have key categories that they need. How will they build out more leagues? How will they build out more viewership in terms of live sports and streaming? That's the first part. I think from a standpoint of cruise ships and parks, the pricing model has almost taken people out. Right? It's become almost too expensive now to make a family vacation. So they got to figure that piece out. I think what was key when we were growing up in this space, I would say like early 2000s to 2010s, I felt like the licensing game from Disney was very strong. It was so strong. They have the most iconic characters. They have a legion of an audience. Licensing hasn't looked the same. It used to be in apparel. It used to be in, trinkets. It used to be lunch. All those things don't exist anymore. So what is the new way that they're going to license these characters? Obviously, film has done well from there. This year, it looks like it's going to be a record-breaking year for them. Toy Story 4 is at like $600 million already, one of the fastest growing films.
Right?
They had Avatar last year. They got the Marvel universe coming back this year. So film is still going to be strong for them. The licensing piece, I think, is important. Figuring out how they're going to monetize live sports will be the biggest task that they have on hand. I wouldn't even look at mergers and acquisitions right now. I know that I saw that Comcast is kind of splitting up the NBC Universal. They have such a strong catalog already with Fox Searchlight. Hulu is in the umbrella. If they could just figure out how to get live sports in a fast track to monetizing, I think we could see a rebound from the company.
And Rashad, what about you? If you were the CEO of Nike, what would you do to turn the brand around?
Yeah, Nike, I think, is in a tough spot, like, because it's not like you could just wave a magical wand and just say, okay, this is what we need to do. I mean, they have competition, but more importantly, I think it's the way that they're viewed has changed over the last 30 years to just a good company and not an essential company. Like, at one point in time, Nike was an essential company from a sports apparel standpoint, from a fashion standpoint. They were an essential company. Now, kids, it doesn't really matter if you have Nikes or not. It's not a big deal. You play basketball, you could if you play in Adidas or if you play in, whatever, like nobody's looking at it like, oh, you have to have this, right? Like Jordan brand can only do so much with, keep putting out the same sneakers that they had 30 years ago over and over again. The apparel business, once again, I mean, I don't even know if anybody's really into. I mean, the Nike Tech, that was a good wave that they had. Outside of that, what and on the apparel side is Nike known for, where it's like, oh, we have to get a Nike. Like I said, outside of that, it's just, it's just retro. It's niche. It's become kind of a niche thing. Like if you like, the retro swishy suit or something like that, but it's not like a go-to, I must have this Nike item as far as apparel is concerned. Soccer is the biggest sport. And Adidas has made a lot of headway with that. So they don't control that market. Basketball, they're still the leaders in the space in basketball, but like I said, it's not something that I think, so when you look at their business model, it's based off of shoes and apparel, and both of those have changed drastically. I don't think you just automatically become like an AI company and just start like a whole new business model after you've built your business brand the same way for 30 years. Previously, I would say, only Kanye could save him, but obviously that's not happening now. He's in a whole nother headspace. So you can't it's not like one magic person that can just come and just change the entire brand. It's going to have to be done at the grassroots level. But I think it's really maybe even just limited supply. I feel like there's a lot of inventory when it comes to Nike and sneakers, and that kind of dilutes the brand. So maybe it's a thing of just cutting back, having less, not trying to be everything to everybody, which they have become a brand like that, which they do everything. Nike swimming and whatever you could think of, it's like Nike, the logo on it. But honestly, I don't think that there's one solution that can change it. I would definitely look at cutting back inventory. I would look at, pushing harder into emerging markets. They're doing a good job with that in China, which is not an emerging market, it's already here, but they're doing a good job with that in China. I would focus more on Africa as well, especially since we're talking about soccer. 10 teams in the World Cup from Africa, that's not a fluke. And if you look at, even if you look at the best team, France, half of their players are African, including the best player, who's arguably the best player in the tournament.
Best two.
And Mbappe, he's both his parents are from, one is from Algeria, one's from Cameroon, I think. That's both two African countries. So, that's something that they really might want to make a strong push into the continent. They're not going to see like the rate of return on that tomorrow or next year. But if you're thinking 20 years, 30 years down the line, if they can really conquer the African market, I think that will be beneficial for them. Like I said, especially when you look at such a young population, soccer being the number one sport, but then basketball being like the number two sport, which basketball, they've already had great track record in basketball anyway. NBA is already making headways in Africa. So I'll focus internationally.
You think Disney needs to, is this the case of two American companies dying off because the economy in America is slowly degrading and it's time for them to start to look internationally to grow the base?
I think Disney's done that, right? When you talk about putting parks, obviously they have Disney Paris. Disney Dubai is going to be the biggest, or Abu Dhabi is going to be the biggest park that they've ever created. They've put artificial intelligence at the forefront of that. But then you got to think about global conflict, right? So how many people, if that persists, how many people are willing to say, hey, let's go to Abu Dhabi to go to Disney World, right? So like that affects the business model too. But they've tried the expansion. And I mean, that I feel like how much growth are they going to get from cruise and parks, right? Like it has almost like a ceiling for it. Whereas if you could figure out the live sports piece, advertising dollars are going to continue to increase. Viewership is going to continue to increase. And we see that's what the moneymaker is going to be.
And they had such a bang when a Disney app first came out. And for them not to fully take advantage of that, and then also two businesses, they're in the digital and the physical real estate business. Even restructuring that debt, that's a monumental task to be able to even do.
I like the point about what that Shadi, you made about the idea of athletes again returning back to the countries of origin and playing soccer. So you got 17s going into around the 32, but you're seeing a movement where they're finding people who have traces to the diaspora and now playing. And so like a Cape Verde, and shout out to Cape Verde. I know Magda's super, super ecstatic about Cape Verde. The smallest country in the World Cup actually goes through. Why? They found talent that was from the island, but they also found bloodline from the island to come back and play. If that happens, now you're talking about Africa as a completely different dominant space in terms of the world of football as they know it. And the two companies that have been in that space, Puma for sure on the continent, and Adidas.
For sure.
And so that's interesting, right? So like yes, they get transplanted to. If you look at any team in Europe, pretty much every one of them that I can think of, I'm thinking about the top teams, they all have somebody from African descent on the team playing for them for a different nation. So it's an interesting thing, but it's good to see. It's good to see.
I mean, France whole team.
Yeah,
the whole team.
So and Mbappe for sure, but Dembele too, he's actually the player of the year for the past 2 years. Same thing. You look at Spain with Yamal. Like he's the best player in the world. I mean, it's there. It's just about will they see like going back to or do they have the facilities? Do they have the infrastructure to go back and play for their home countries? That'll be an interesting journey over the next, I'd say, like 2 or 3 World Cups if that persists.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's the matter of the African countries getting strong enough where they could build their own facilities so they could just keep.
Do they have the infrastructure?
I don't think the goal is to get people to come back. I think the goal is to grow homegrown. You're already growing the homegrown talent.
Yeah,
they're leaving because.
They want to go to the place where they can become better faster. So I was saying, if infrastructure gets built in these countries, we're talking about it. I mean, completely different.
Because it all comes down to economics. A lot of these parents don't even know that their kids are going to be star. A lot of times, they're leaving for a better life, immigration. So if they didn't need to leave, and they actually had a stronger economy, then they could actually keep homegrown talent. And then that would actually accelerate their sports program. So it all comes down to economics. So if these African countries can grow better economies, then their sports program will get better and they'll be more dominant on the world stage as opposed to exporting all of their talent to Europe. They're going to Europe for a better life. But if they had a better life, they wouldn't have to go to Europe. So that's a whole nuanced conversation with itself. But
that's a whole, because what companies will be allowed into Africa to fund those facilities without having pushback and reverberation?
But there's the piece too. Yes, that is true. But there's also the piece that they're looking at it like that's the best place to play. So like even our American talent, if they're good, they're going to Europe. That's what they're going to play, right? So Pulisic, he has to, in order for him to be great, he's got to go play in La Liga. He's got to play in the Premier League because they're saying like that's where the greatest talent is. It's the reason why like Messi doesn't play in Argentina. He played at PSG, he played at Barcelona, and at the end of his career, like now you can come to MLS. Everybody has that journey where it's like, all right, go play in Europe to see if you're really great, and then you can come back.
But the difference between that and Messi is Messi always played for Argentina National League.
Right.
So there's a difference between saying, okay, I'm going to stay in this country, but then I'm going to play overseas as a professional. But these people are moving, establishing citizenship. They're becoming citizens. They're getting names. They get European names. That's because they're trying to escape their situation that they're in. It's no different from baseball when Cuba, when they coming in the inner tubes to Miami because they was trying to escape their situation and they wanted a better life. So yeah, it's a political thing, but long story short, Nike should invest in Africa. And if Africa can, as a continent, can progress in a way that they should progress as far as economics, it's going to change the balance of everything. Like you're going to see the World Cup dominance being won in Africa. Because even if they play for PSG, if they live in Senegal full year round, Ghana, they never moved, their parents never moved, and they just say, okay, I'm just going to play for PSG, but I'm a Ghanaian citizen first and foremost. So that's going to change. That's going to change.
That's
everything.
why I said, so like a guy like Hakimi in Morocco has done that, right? Like he is a star. He's a PSG star, but he's also the star of the Moroccan national team, right? So like we got to see that happen. Like Nigeria, right? We got to see that in Ghana. We got to see that in Ivory Coast, right? They've done that, but we need to see more.
100%.
And Nike has a great blueprint for it. You may have to call World Wide West for one. But the model that they had back in the day with Sonny Vaccaro and all the Nike camps back in the day, you have an existing blueprint for just a different sport in a different continent. But I think you are absolutely right. Like treating it like a farm system and having the capital pour in will definitely give you a leg up, no pun intended.
We'll see.